Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your first mini lesson for English 10A. You'll see these throughout the semester and throughout the class as a way to add additional information to the things that you read during the week, as well as provide extra instructions and to review what's important about the pieces that we've read and some notes along the way for you as well. Today's mini lesson is about the philosophy of composition by Edgar Allan Poe. We're going to go over the main points of that so you're aware and you're ready for that quiz that comes up at the end of the week, as well as anything else going on. We'll review those main points today as well. Mini lessons are going to be anywhere between 4 minutes and 10 minutes usually on average. Sometimes you'll get one that's a little bit longer, that's very rare. Other times they'll be very, very short, just providing individual steps of a process that we want you to focus on as you're writing in the class. Great opportunity for you to gain a little more insight into the material that you may have missed along the way. So let's get started with today's on the philosophy of composition. Just a reminder that the philosophy of composition presents Edgar Allan Poe's views on how to compose a poem, a short story, or another literary work. He uses The Raven, his poetic masterpiece, as a means to do this by revisiting some of the steps that he uses in the process. Note that he doesn't just say this is for a poem, or this is for a short story, or this is for a novel. These steps will work along the way for each of you as you move forward, depending on what you're doing. Some may apply, some may not. But for where we're heading, your personal narrative at the end of this unit as a final project should have these elements, and you should use these steps along the way. Poe advises writers to do the following. Remember, these are going to be guidelines. They're not always going to work for you, but the guidelines that we include are going to be helpful along the way. Think of it as a guide, as an expectation. Sometimes you're going to follow them, other times you're not. It just depends on the piece. Poe recommends that you plan a project to its conclusion before beginning to write. Think of this as finding your way out of the maze before you move on. If you know the route, if you know where you're heading, you don't need the GPS. You're ready to go and you know that process. Plan a project to its conclusion before beginning to write. The writer must know how a literary work is to end before its tone is established and its details presented. If you know where you're heading, you're going to be able to apply those steps more effectively. You're going to be able to foreshadow effectively those elements that you want to. Your style and tone are going to make more sense because you know where you're heading. Poe also states that you should decide the effect you wish decide the effect you wish your work to have on the reader before you begin writing. What that means is that you need to know how you want your reader to feel. Poe is the master of the horror genre. He knows suspense. He likes surprise. And he likes to keep you guessing along the way. So he uses that foreshadowing to make sense and give you those little hints along the way of what's coming. But as a writer, he needs to know where he's heading before he gets there so he can lay those traps for you. Poe also says to begin writing the work. As you progress, keep in mind the conclusion on which you've decided. Remember where you're heading. You can deviate in the process along the way, but if you know where you're heading, you know what the ultimate goal is. Not everything that you plan out may pan out, but by knowing where you're heading, it's going to help your piece be more effective. He also states that you need to keep the literary work short enough for the reader to complete in one sitting. It's called a short story for a reason. At a maximum, it should be 10 pages. Any longer than that, it's going to be hard to continue to keep that. You're turning it into a novel at that point. So keep the literary work short enough for the reader to complete in one sitting. And he says for this reason, if the length of the work requires the reader to put it down and come back to it on another day, the affairs of everyday life will divert the reader's attention and diminish the effect of the literary work after he resumes reading it, or she resumes reading it. If you have to put it down and then you have to go to practice, and then you have to eat dinner, and then you have to go for a walk, and then you come back to it, the effect's not going to be the same. Everyday life has entered that world that the author has created, meaning that it's difficult to get back into that same mindset they are. If you can read it in one sitting, you don't have to deal with those things. Poe also says to work hard to perfect your writing. It is a fallacy that inspiration and intuition play a significant role in the creative process. A great work requires toil and sweat. For a piece to be effective, you have to have inspiration and intuition. That's the base of the piece. That's what you bring to the table as an author. Something that you're excited about writing and that interests you, you have that inspiration already. You know where you want to head. But it's the revising and the editing processes that allow us to take a good piece with great inspiration and intuition and make it a great piece and a masterpiece as we continue to revise and edit. No one is able to have a masterpiece on a first draft. It's the time that we put in and the perspective and the change and the asking of advice for other people that move that piece from good to great to excellent. This is your first mini lesson. Those are the items that you want to keep in mind as we move forward and as you keep looking at other pieces that we feel are great examples of short stories and the worlds that they pull you into and create. If you have any questions, feel free to let your instructor know. They're there to help you out, and have a great rest of the day.